Hey guys, what's up? And welcome back to the channel and some more Birthright coverage here. So we're getting close to the end of the domains of the Heartlands, and we're on to the non-physical domains, or domains that don't have any actual physical or geographical territory. And so, as always, we start with the most important or major church here, and in the Heartlands, that is by far the Western Imperial Temple of Haelyn, and just for all of Anweir in general, is the largest temple and most powerful, as you can see by the excessive holdings that you have here. So lots of different levels represented here, and just again, tons and tons of resources. So if you want to play a very powerful church, if you wanted to be a regent and just have that kind of power and might at your command in service of whatever god that might be, in this case Haelyn, of course, this is a great one. And notice it's lawful neutral, although the current leader of that, the archprelate, is actually lawful good, but as a whole, the church is lawful neutral. So it's definitely something interesting to consider. All right, digging into the details here for the Western Imperial Temple. So again, recommended, so you can definitely play it. And again, domains, holdings all over the place. So Regency generated versus accumulated, so a fair bit there, 58 versus 25 there. The archprelate spends most of what he brings in on expanding his holdings. So despite all that, that's still a fair bit of Regency that you have to play with right off the bat. And then the massive thing here to look at is the treasury, right? 40 gold bars on top of spending a lot just to, again, expand the power and influence of the church. But 40 gold bars, that is more than most of the domains on the list here. Certainly more than I think any of the ones that are playable. And outside of, like Borrowing or Avenel or something like that, you can't really reach those treasury levels. So the fact that you have access to that means you really have a fantastic war chest that you can use for all different avenues of playing this domain and trying to expand, whether it's just building up your levels of your holdings where possible, adding new holdings, expanding your church locations, in other words, hell, even raising an army with permission of any regions you might need to go and do some good works for that region to let your church have more power and influence. So there's just so many ways you can play that card, and with a lot of the influence here from Avenel, certainly getting him on board for that, and you could certainly put the resources of the church to use in conjunction with his aims whenever those overlap to grind down some of your opposition there. So we'll talk about that in a moment. So, as with the RP, the church spends gold liberally. However, its vast holdings make it nearly impossible to run out of money. So, unless you're really running this domain poorly and running it into the ground, just with all the domains you have there and other ways of probably collecting revenue, as it says, you really would struggle to run out of gold bars. So, that being said, if you want to play as the current regent here, as opposed to coming up with your own character, which is an option, and why not? This is a level 13 priest, guys, right off the bat. So probably going to butcher the name, but either Rober or Rover, Nichelair or Nicolair, just depends. But anyways, a priest of Haelyn, of course, as you might expect. Very fantastic bloodline. 53 is awfully strong. Again, up there with some of the major heavy hitters in the political scene from the domains we've covered, and he is lawful good himself. But he watches over the temple's holdings and interests like a hawk. Under his guidance, the temple has gained much glory, as we can see by the, again, extensive holding and regency points and gold bars, right? So the description here, the Western Imperial Temple has sold most of its ideals to make way for profit and power. It serves the interests of Avenel, but has another hidden agenda as well, which isn't revealed here, but I think some of the other online sites and fan sites have kind of expanded upon that, so you can make of that what you will, or come up with your own, of course, in your campaign with your DM. And then its most vocal enemies are the other sects of Haelyn. So again, as usual, we list some of these smaller church domains throughout the rest of the Heartlands, and that's really getting at where you might want to expand. So as it mentions here, the biggest issue is when the Church of Haelyn had basically its various schisms and essentially split. We saw the the other versions of the church so far as we've covered domains. So these different sects, of course, are a problem, and that's where you've lost some power and influence. So that being said, trying to tackle them right off the bat is probably going to not be the greatest plan, just because those are going to be the biggest obstacles. They're both all the other sects are again very well established, and you'll probably really create like actual religious strife out in the open which again may spill over into the political side and have issues there. So you might not want to go that route. I think it's far easier to look at some of these other smaller faiths and see where they're vulnerable in some of your areas and use that to sort of muscle them out onto the fringe and ultimately just again win over the hearts and minds or their souls at least of the various populations where your church is located, and again just get rid of these other faiths wherever possible. So that's I think where really your regency and gold bars would be well spent. And again, you have access to so many resources here that just none of these other churches really do, so you can use that to just perform good works for the public. And again, a little bit of coin invested in things like that can just easily do what preaching whatever it is that you want to preach for your religion here may not as easily accomplish. So using that in conjunction with the message of your church is I think where really you're best served. And then you can start looking at showing that you're just simply the best version of the worship of Haelyn. So you can start gradually eroding some of the power and influence that the other sects have established, and just again depending on the way the campaign goes, possibly then looking at more direct conflict or direct means of perhaps reuniting the different sects or just stamping them out. But again, that's I think a long-term goal. Immediately you can start working on these smaller faiths, and again finding opportunities to perhaps at some point, even depending on the way your campaign goes and what all is going on, you may eventually be able to establish some physical territory, perhaps as a reward for loyally serving, let's say, Avenel again, or something like that. Maybe they grant you some territory in Alami or Alamier or Tornin or something like that, where again, perhaps just as a buffer and maybe a sort of independent country, you can work hand in hand a little bit more closely with Avenel. But that would just be an awesome goal, to have actual physical territory as your church and then have your own theocracy that you can roll. So lots of different possibilities there. But again, taking a look at where you're located, you have a fair bit in Tegas. Alamier, of course, we mentioned that. Again, there's all kinds of conflict rife there on the political side. Avenel, again, you're really not going to do anything to cross that ruler, of course. So best to always be working hand in hand with him wherever possible. You have some holdings in Endier as well. You do need to tread carefully there because, again, Kalian, if it's run by an NPC, certainly should be a formidable foe there if you cross any of his interests. And then again, you have some holdings in Tornin as well. So again, other areas where there is possibility for expansion, you just have to pick and choose and be careful there. And you don't want to spread yourself out too thinly either. So as it kind of indicates here, you might be spending just a hell of a lot of resources already. So it's best to take stock of what's important, find areas where you can again raise up your levels to again stamp out the influence of other possible faiths in those given provinces, and then work on expanding in some of the ways we've illustrated there. But anyway, love to hear what you guys think. Have you either roleplayed as the Western Imperial Temple and run as a domain? Have you just been a a PC as part of the faith and worked your way up through the hierarchy of the faith there, or just in some other way encountered the Western Imperial Temple in your campaign? So certainly would love to hear your guys' stories. Hit us up in the comments. You know what to do. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, guys. We got more coming here for Birthright in the near future for you, so stay tuned there. Thanks again so much for hanging out, and we'll see you in the next one.